Hello and welcome to Cheetah TV. My name's Brian Badger from the Cheetah Conservation Fund. Now, one of the favourite things and most exhilarating things about frontline conservation is when you actually get to release an animal back into the wild. But that's not an easy process. You know, the rescue, the rehab, and the release of an animal can take many, many steps, sometimes months, sometimes years, to ensure the best possible chance for that animal to survive back into the wild, because the wild is a tough place. Now, CCF have been releasing cheetahs back into the wild for the last 35 years or so. And the processes have changed over the years, and we've developed best practices of how to actually do this and the best chance of that for that animal to survive. Now, to give you more details, I thought I'd go back to the Global Cheetah Summit that was held in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. And one of the presentations was by Eli Walker, who's a rehabilitation and release specialist. And he presented and he showed us some of the intricacies of the processes that go towards getting an animal in as a rescue, rehabilitation, and then hopefully release. So if you like the videos, you find them interesting, please subscribe, like, and share. You know, it helps the channel grow, and it also helps us, you know, get the message out about frontline conservation. Now, you can find details of the releases and all the different aspects of holistic conservation that CCF is so famous for. You can find all that information on our website, which is at cheetah.org. So without further ado, let's pop across to Addis Ababa and hear from Eli Walker.
I've been with CCF for about most of the last 11 years or so, and while we all serve in multiple functions at CCF, most of my work has focused on the rescue, rehabilitation, and release of the cheetahs in Namibia. Throughout the last 30 years, CCF has handled about 700 animals throughout its center in Namibia, and these animals are primarily coming from human-wildlife conflict throughout the country. We have a record of now over 1,000 captures throughout the country. We haven't handled all of these animals ourselves, but we do have record of these captures. And like I said, most of them are from human-wildlife conflict. Some of the animals that we handle, we put right back out into the wild. It's the goal to put them straight back into the wild as quickly as possible. But some of them do require rehabilitation at our center before they can return to the wild. Out of those, about 110 are the ones requiring rehabilitation, and 60 or so far of them have been orphaned cubs. My work has focused on how to take these cubs, how to raise them in captivity, and how to return them to the wild. Additionally, we've had some adults with their cubs as well that we've managed to rehabilitate in captivity and return to the wild. So like I was saying, most of these animals do stay in captivity. Particularly the orphaned cubs that we rescue, stay in captivity their whole life. But as often as possible and as much as we can, we're doing our best to raise these cubs well in captivity so that they can be returned to the wild. And with our techniques, we've had really good success with this. As Vincent was explaining, there's been a lot of failures in Southern Africa. And some of those projects have involved captive raised individuals, and those projects in particular have had really, really poor success. But with the techniques that CCF has developed, we've had pretty good success returning these particular cubs back into the wild. We don't necessarily see any more predator naivety in our captive raised orphans than we do see with translocated animals. And we have similar survival rates to animals that have been translocated in reserves in South Africa as well. So our captive raised, our rehabilitation process is showing similar success to cats that are caught from the wild and translocated. And we've had several successful cubs, successful litters being produced out of the animals that we've rehabilitated, including the recent litters born in India. I hope our Indian colleagues can confirm this, but I'm pretty sure that these cubs, they were sired by one of the Namibian males named Oban, or I think Pavan, yeah. And they're the third generation descendant from a rehabilitated cat that was released in Namibia in 2014. So a little bit of a long-term legacy of our rehabilitated cats there. Some of our survival rates, and there are some factors that seem to affect survival. One of the biggest ones, particularly for males, is coalitions. When we have cubs arriving into captivity, we do our best to form artificial coalitions with cubs of similar ages, as the group sizes seem to have a big impact on survival. Also, release sites. Going back to again to Vincent's talk, with these rehabilitated animals, having a fenced reserve to do this rehabilitation process in is rather crucial, and I'll get into that a little bit more later on. So throughout the history of our program, generally we've always said that, or stuck to this 6-month age limit. If the cub is orphaned at 6 months or older, we generally have considered it a candidate for rehabilitation. The cubs that are orphaned at a younger age generally tend to not be candidates for rehabilitation and release. But we're doing our best to reduce that number as much as we can. And one of the cats that went to India and was doing very well, she was orphaned. She's the cub of a female that was orphaned at 4 months of age in Namibia, and her brother is still alive and well in the wild in Namibia as well. We think that there's a lot of potential for captive bred and for our techniques to be applied to captive bred individuals, and also individuals that are orphaned at extremely young ages, like the cats that we have in Somaliland. But this particular aspect needs to be explored much further, as we've not had the time or the space and opportunity to explore the use of captive bred individuals or our cats in Somaliland. But there's a lot of animals there and a lot of potential for these methods to be applied. So with our efforts, the careful selection of candidates has been very important. And a few aspects of that is, the level of habituation that the cubs have for release. If the animal is extremely comfortable with people, generally that would rule it out as a candidate for rehabilitation and release. But we don't need, for this process, we need to be able to monitor the animal. Post-release monitoring is very important. So we always try and maintain a balanced level of habituation in the cats that we're rehabilitating, so that we can provide the post-release support, particularly in the early days of release. Like I was saying earlier, we form coalitions as often as possible. Females don't stick together post-release, but we will raise groups of females together and release them together. But males, as long as they're joined early enough in captivity as younger cubs, they do bond very well. So we can have, a coalition of like 5 males represented by, 3 or 4 different litters. All unrelated, but as long as they're being raised together, they do bond quite well, and they stick together for life most of the time. While they're in captivity, we're generally not releasing any animal before 2.5 years of age, but throughout that time in captivity, it's extremely important for them to maintain physical fitness and tip-top shape in terms of their health before they're released. So we large enclosures at CCF, and we have ways of caring for them that we can keep them healthy and fit throughout that time. And particularly before release, it's very important that animals become accustomed to a natural feeding regime if they haven't already been accustomed to the natural feeding regime. It's easy for us in captivity to feed our animals every day, but in the wild, that's not natural at all. When an animal is being released, they need to be able to gorge and really fill themselves up. Animals coming from captivity that are being fed on a more regular basis generally can't eat the quantities of food that they need to take full utility of every kill that they make. So by switching their feeding to a more natural regime before they're released, it allows their systems a chance to expand and kind of their stomachs to stretch out so that when they do make successful kills, they can eat much more than they normally would in captivity. So to sum up, in captivity, it's physical fitness, balancing the habituation levels with people and their managers, and making sure that they're accustomed to a natural feeding regime. Very important. Site selection for our work, we really haven't had much of it. Should say more so release site there. We haven't had much option in terms of where we're releasing cats. There's not many places in Namibia where people want to have more cheetahs, but the three types are open farmland, open reserves, and fenced reserves. And from what we found, for the rehabilitated cats themselves, having a fenced system is generally a lot better and provides a lot higher success. And this is primarily because, one, they don't come into conflict with people, and two, we always retain the ability to track that animal and follow it up and provide assistance where necessary. In open systems, they can cross a human border, a property border or whatnot, and that might prevent us from being able to follow that cat and provide support as necessary. So generally for this work, we do prefer to stick to the fenced reserves. Additionally, in fenced reserves, reserve staff, so like safari guides, can be of assistance in the long-term monitoring of these animals as well. So post-release monitoring is really like the key factor that has enabled the success that we've had. Taking an animal that's been born in captivity and releasing it straight into the wild without any sort of post-release support, that animal's pretty much doomed to failure. These cubs, they lack all of or much of the experience that they would have with their mother in the wild, but the skills that they need to survive are highly instinctual. So as long as they have enough time to go through trial and error and figure out how to be wild cheetahs again, as long as they have enough time to do that, we see really, really good success. And that's kind of what has set us apart from similar efforts in the past, is how intensely we monitor these animals post-release. And most of the time, they don't need too much support. Post-release or supplemental feeding and watering post-release is crucial. And for the first month of release, we are present with the animal to support them with food if they are unsuccessful in making kills. And that just gives them the time and the space that they need to attempt to hunt often enough until they figure it out. And in general, most of the cats that we have only need 2 or 3 feedings before they really figure out how to feed themselves in the wild. If we released an animal without providing that support, they might have a week or 2 tops before they starve to death. But with our efforts, we've never had a cat die of starvation. And all of our cats figure out how to hunt on their own. And some animals, particularly some of the females, they really do figure it out right away, and they don't need any support. We've had cats, you release them, they grew up in captivity, and they know exactly what to do. So those hunting skills and those survival skills are present in any cheetah. They're all wild animals. It's just about, our technique is just about providing the time and the space in a secure environment for them to relearn how to be wild. And that's, again, why that balanced level of habituation is super important. If we release an animal and we can't see it and we can't track it on the ground and we can't approach that animal, there's nothing that we can do to support that animal. In some places, you might be able to fly in a helicopter and look at the cat from the air, but in Namibia and some of these thicker conditions, that's not always possible. So this, this semi level of habituation is very important. And additionally with that, if an animal gets injured, we always have the opportunity to provide emergency veterinary support to that animal as well, which can mitigate some losses that otherwise would have happened. So we really believe that the lessons that we've learned in how to work with these animals and how to take them from unusual setting and put them back into the wild presents a lot of lessons for high-stakes reintroduction projects. And as we move forward with further reintroductions, In addition to supporting wild-caught animals, we can start perhaps opening up the source populations that we have by bringing in more of the captive side. And yeah, that's where we think there's a lot of value in this work and a lot of potential for the things that we've learned in Namibia. Thank you.
Thank you, Eli.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, I hope that sheds some light on those intricacies that I was talking about. It's not quite as easy as it seems. We all want to feel that a cheetah can just come in and go straight back into the wild. But hopefully all that information demonstrates it's really not that easy. And sometimes it's impossible. If the cubs, like Eli was saying, when they come in as tiny babies, sometimes their chances for actual release are pretty much zero. But we want to try our best. And every cat that comes into our care, we want to give the chance, at least the chance of going out and becoming a wild cheetah again. So if you find the videos interesting or you enjoy them, please subscribe, like and share. And you can find all the information about the release programs and all the holistic conservation projects that CCF is so famous for. You can find those details on our website, which is at cheetah.org. So thanks very much for joining us. From me, Brian Badger, I'll see you again and hopefully on the next edition of Cheetah TV.